Hello, everyone, and welcome to another series of Leaders Connect podcast. This is Essie Daniel, and I'm so delighted that you're here with me. I cannot thank you enough. I always look forward to this time of the week when we get together and grow together. Where are you joining me from? I would love to know where you are listening to me from. Are you in the United States? Is it night? Is it morning for you? Are you in Africa? Are you in Asia? What part of the world are you in? Let me know in the comment section. It's always a delight to read your comments and to see where you're listening in from or where you're watching me from. So this is Essie again with Leaders Connect podcast, also with Aspire Global Leadership. I'm a certified executive coach as well as an international speaker and a leadership trainer, and I love that I get to do this. But above all things, I love who I get to do it with, and that is you. You are valuable. I appreciate you and thank you for creating the time to be here with me today. Let's get started. The last few weeks, we've been talking about the qualities of a great leader. And we are continuing on the same today. And we're going to talk about intentionality. Every great leader knows that growth does not just happen. Things don't just happen. We've got to be intentional about everything that we do. Okay? And so I'm going to be talking from the book that's written by my mentor, John Maxwell. And this is the name of the book, 15 Valuable Laws of Growth. This book has transformed my life. And I'm so excited that I get to touch on a few points here in this book on the law of intentionality. You see, John says that growth doesn't just happen. In fact, he opens the chapter by saying, life is now in session. Are you present? Life is now in session. Are you present? As we carry on, we'll realize that one of the key questions that I want you to ask yourself is, do I have a growth plan? Do you know what it is that you want to achieve? If so, how are you going to get to it? How are you going to get the desired results? How are you going to get there? A good example that I'm going to be using later in one of the growth gaps is if I was to start a journey from here, I'm in Washington, Seattle, or rather I'm in Seattle, Washington. If I was to start my journey from here in Washington all the way to California, I would need to know specifically the date, the time of departure, where I'm going, and I need to be prepared, obviously. How am I going to get there? If I'm driving, then I ought to know how I'm going to drive, or am I going to use an electric car, or am I going to drive a regular car? Am I going to rent a car? How am I going to get there? I've got to be intentional. Otherwise, it may not happen. And that's why John starts this chapter by saying that growth doesn't just happen. My growth as a leader will not just happen. I've got to be intentional about it. Growth requires intentionality. Working hard doesn't guarantee us success. And hope isn't a strategy. We've got to be intentional. And so if I may ask you, as I bring you in now, as we start talking about the different misconceptions of growth that we have, the law of intentionality teaches us that growth needs taking action, intentional actions, because it doesn't just happen by itself. It is not going to happen by accident. Think about it. You will not wake up one day and look outside your backyard and see that there are mango trees and apple trees and there are collard greens and potatoes or even flowers or palm trees growing in your backyard. You've got to have planted them and taken action for you to even have a soil or prepare the soil so that it can accommodate those particular plants or fruits or vegetables or flowers, right? It is the same way. We've got to be intentional. And so the law of intentionality encompasses and empowers us in making transformative decisions that can change our lives and those who live around us. And it speaks the power of choice, to be intentional, to choose to grow. You can choose what strengthens you, what encourages you, what brings out the best out of you, and apply it in your life. You see, all that growth takes is choosing what is good and right for you, what gives you energy, what brings out the best in you. It helps you to get into that hopeful future beyond the next decision. So, as we talk about intentionality, I want you to pause for a moment and assess your life and build a plan for developing your growth. Because as we talk about these growth gaps, we've got to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be. In fact, John in his book says that the biggest gap that we need to bridge is between knowing and doing. The biggest gap in our lives is between knowing and doing. So I want you to take the time to develop a plan on how you will grow. And you've got to be intentional, because when it comes to growing in character as a person, or even in academically, we've got to have a plan. We've got to be intentional. We've got to put in work. We've got to schedule in some time so that we can grow in this particular area. We've had a successful catering business. I love it when I call it successful, because when it started right in the comfort of my kitchen. I had no idea what I was doing, but I needed to do what I needed to do because kids had to eat and mama had to pay rent. Right? Interesting way to put it. But we needed to make our ends meet, and one income was not enough. So we needed to find a way to achieve our dreams. And so we launched our catering business, and we started by making the simplest food items, especially pastries, that we could, because we knew our rent wasn't going to get paid by accident. We needed to be intentional. Money wasn't just going to show up in our bank accounts. We needed to be intentional. And you can probably attest to areas in your life that you've had to be intentional about so that you can grow. So let's look at these 8 misconceptions about growth that are holding us back from being intentional in our growth. And misconception number 1 is the knowledge gap. The knowledge gap states, I don't know how I'm going to grow. I don't know how I'm going to grow. How will I grow? I've never in a million years known how to do that. I just don't even know where to start. I've never heard of such a thing, And you can go on and on with excuses. Each one of us has the opportunity to bridge the gap, the knowledge gap, so that you can bring your realities closer to your vision. When you don't know how to grow, it can become a serious reason for you not wanting to improve and develop. However, lack of knowledge should not be an obstruction to your growth process. If you don't know the process of growing, ask those who know. Invite them to a phone call or ask them if they could schedule you into their program, into their schedule, and just chat with them. If at this point you're not able to speak to experts in the area of, that you're interested in, read their books. But whatever you have to do, just don't say, I don't know how to do it. Don't say that, I don't know where to start. Ask those who are already doing it. Take time to look out for the resources that can teach you and guide you towards your growth path. Because it would be best if you start right away. Don't just sit and say, I don't know. Say, I may not know at the moment, but I will do what it takes for me to know. By the end of this month or by the end of this week, I will have an idea what this is, and I'll have a plan on how I can get started. So you have all the help you need out there. And all you need to do is to have the intent to find them. All right, growth gap number 2 is the assumption gap. Assumption gap states that, or rather assumes that I will grow automatically. Things will just happen. I don't have to plant cabbage in my backyard. If I want cabbage, it will just grow. No, it doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't just happen. If you want to be a great leader, be intentional about your growth, because growth will not just naturally come. You can't succeed unless you're ready to face the challenges and overcome them. Growth with your preparedness will give you the desired results. You have to constantly improve yourself by taking all the necessary steps to figure out your growth strategy. That, my friend, is the assumption gap. Now let's talk about the next gap. It's called the mistake gap. Mistake gap says, I am afraid to make mistakes. I don't want to fail. You see, perfectionism is a trait that paralyzes and causes you to die with unfulfilled dreams. You need to understand that growth is not at all neat and clean pursuit. Growth comes with failure. It comes with climbing mountains. It comes with valley moments. There are days when you will be so discouraged. There are days when you will fail. You cannot just fold your hands and say, I don't want to fail. I don't want to make a mistake. See, success and failure are constant partners. They go hand in hand. They run parallel with each other. You've got to fail for you to learn. And you've got to live with failure. And one of the greatest books that my mentor, John Maxwell, has written is Sometimes You Win and Sometimes You Learn. You see, he did not say sometimes you win and sometimes you fail. He said sometimes you win and sometimes you learn, because failure can be a good thing. Failure is a good thing. You can turn failure so that it gives you lessons to help you succeed next time. My friend, that's how you want to look at failure. That's how you want to look at making mistakes. It would help if you would overcome the worry of mistakes, right? But no, success and failure, they go hand in hand. You win some and you will lose some. Just make sure that the losing part, you turn that into a learning session where you can harvest all the lessons and use it in your next game, in your next pursuit. So move on, make mistakes, learn, and go ahead. That is how the process works. All right, next, let's talk about the perfection gap. Perfection gap states that I have to find the best way before I start. Hey, are there any perfectionists listening to me? Or do you know any perfectionists in your circle? You see, perfectionism, my friend, is a myth. It is similar to the mistake gap that we just talked about, where in practicing perfectionism and avoiding mistakes, you lose your way towards growth. Nobody likes to fail. But unless we fail, we're not going to learn. You see, to find the perfect way, you have to actually start the journey. The closer you keep getting into the path, the more clarity you will get in the way you are moving. In fact, let me read how John puts it. John puts it in a very, it's similar to driving on an unfamiliar road at night. Ideally, you'd like to be able to see your whole route before you begin, but you see it progressively. As you move forward, a little more of the road is revealed to you. If you want to see more of the way, then get moving. You see, you've got to keep moving if you want to see the rest of the road. And this has happened to me. Sometimes when I want to see or drive through a scenic city, I don't want to drive in the night where I cannot see what's where. Because first of all, I'm tired. And number two, I don't have the ability to see what else is ahead because it's dark. But you see, for me to keep seeing more and more of what's ahead, I've got to keep driving. I just have to keep moving forward. And so this perfection gap, unless you get started, you will not see what's ahead. You just have to keep moving forward so that more and more can be revealed to you. Next, we're going to talk about the timing gap. And the timing gap states that it's not the right time to begin. It's not the right time to begin. And the word later is the natural killer of many dreams. I love this timing gap because it gives a story about the 5 frogs that were sitting on a log. And 4 of them decided they were going to jump off. And the question I want to ask you is how many were left behind? The truth of the matter is, how many were left behind? I always get the resounding answer of one frog was left behind. But the truth of the matter is, all 5 frogs were left behind because 4 decided to jump. They never did. They just thought it was a good idea to jump, but they never took action. They were not intentional enough. You see, there's a difference between deciding and doing. John Maxwell says something that I love. He says that he talks about the law of diminishing intent that states the longer you wait to do something you should be doing now, the greater the odds that you will actually do it. And so that being said, timing is everything. Timing is everything. Most people end up talking themselves out of a plan and action taking for them to make progress. If you're waiting for the perfect time, the problem is this: you will wait forever because the perfect time is not going to come. There will always be something that will stand between you and taking action. So whatever you intend to bring the change and improvement in yourself, do it now. And don't say someday, don't say tomorrow. One of the other things that John Maxwell likes to say in his book is take a look at your watch and look at it and let me know when it strikes someday. Definitely there's nothing like someday. And that is the reason why we've got to utilize our calendars and utilize our watches and come up with a date and a time. And then set a reminder if you need to. Because the truth of the matter is, timing is everything. And the best time to get started on any project, it is now. Not tomorrow. It is now. So, it would help if you started now. After this, don't leave the broadcast yet. But after this, come up with a plan and schedule in when you are going to bridge that timing gap. Before we go on to the next gap, you see, a lot of times we say, oh, it's going to take me 5 years for me to be good at this, or it's going to take me 4 years for me to be done with that degree. Well, that's such a long time. Do you know what the truth of the matter is? Time will still pass anyway. Those 4 years that you feel they are too far, it's going to take too long, time will still pass anyway. So get started now. Because those 4 years, long as you're on this side of the world, of life, those 4 years will go by and they'll go by so quickly. So get started. Get started. And when you get started, you will be glad you did. You will have the time to celebrate. Thank you so much for listening to me. I want to reserve the next 3 gaps. Let's talk about those in the next video so that we can shorten our videos and they are fun to watch and listen to. Thank you so much for being here with me. It's Essie Daniel, and I love you. I love you. I appreciate you all. Thank you for always creating the time to be here.